Hello, welcome to an Abundance of Books. My name is Julia and welcome to the obligatory Goodreads video. Every year I debate trying to run through one of the lists or something just because it sounds like such a fun idea, but then every year the list comes out and I'm like, I don't care about half of these books. So what I decided to do was, let's just read the books I actually care about. I went through all of the categories and pulled out any book that I already have in my grubby little paws. And so we're going to try to get through as many of those as we can before the voting expires. And I've got 6 things to talk about, so I think we can just get into those. We'll also be talking about Goodreads, the debacle. It's just incredible how they keep screwing it up year after year, but let's talk about books first. The 2 books that I own physically are Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree, the sequel to Legends and Lattes. And I also have Imogen, obviously, by Becky Albertalli. I have never read a Becky Albertalli, which seems ludicrous, but this one is just too precious and adorable to pass up. This is about a girl who is presumably straight and falls in love with her best female friend. It's something like that, at least. And then Bookshops and Bone Dust is the prequel to Legends and Lattes. I believe we're still following Liv in this and a library. Pretty sure this one has nothing to do with coffee, but I really enjoyed the first one. I don't remember what I gave it. I wasn't as desperately in love with it as everyone else, but I probably gave it a 4-star. So I'm excited to read this eventually. This doesn't feel high on my priority list, but we'll see. And then for books that I don't have physically, we have Ascension by Nicholas Binge. This is a story about a mountain that has suddenly appeared out of nowhere. And that's all I know. That's all I want to know. Then another sci-fi book, I have Starter Villain by John Scalzi. I think I've said that I've needed to read this in about 3 videos now, so maybe that one should be my priority. Do I actually know anything about this book, or do I just know the cover and the title and have made some wild assumptions about it? Then we have Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. This one, I read the first book in this series, Dial A for Aunties is what it's called, and I really enjoyed it. That was one of my favorite books of last year, but then the sequel got really bad reviews and just didn't sound like someone who liked the first book would like this book. So I've kind of been steering away from Vera Wong for those reasons, even though I don't know if that's valid. I don't know how related to the original world this is, or if it's a whole separate thing, so we'll see. And then the final book that we have is Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries by Heather Fawcett. I want to say Emily Wilde writes it every single time. This I'm reading for a book club. It isn't something that I'm super interested in, but it turns out that a lot of the, well, not a lot, but more books than general in the fantasy category have I read and really enjoyed. So I would like to add another one to sort of round out my opinion of that category, at least a little bit. So yeah, that's what we're going to be reading over the next 3 weeks, I think, is the timeline for this. So let's go ahead and get reading. We have our first casualty of the video, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries. I have decided to DNF. This wasn't something that I picked for myself. This is something I was reading for a book club, and I didn't realize exactly what it was. Fantasy isn't my preferred thing. And then this is also historical, and it's really not gelling with me. I read the first 2 chapters, the first 10-ish%, and yeah, I'm good to call it. I don't know where this is going. Maybe it's good. If I hear a bunch of people in the book club love it, then maybe I'll go back and pick it up, but it's just about Emily Wilde going to this remote town somewhere, Europe, vaguely, and she's going to study fairies. And it's also written as journal entries, which I think also isn't my preferred style. I know, it's not your preferred style either. So I'm not heartbroken to DNF this one. I'm definitely not the authority on it. I actually don't even know if it has good reviews, but that's one we can say I tried to read for the fantasy category and didn't, which I think means 3 now, which feels a lot better. Well, hi, I'm here to talk to you about Ascension by Nicholas Binge. I actually previously recorded a clip about when I was halfway through the book, and then I finished the book and I thought that clip doesn't make any sense. It both spoils and is an unfair portrayal of the book, so I'm just gonna start again. What I knew going into Ascension was it was about a mountain that appears out of nowhere. No idea of characters, plot, nothing. And by the end of the book, I kind of still feel the same way. It's about our main character, Harry, who is a physicist, and he has been tasked with climbing the mountain. Except the book opens at the end of the book where Harry's brother, this is so confusing. Harry has been presumed dead for a number of years, and then Harry's brother Ben finds out that he's still alive and in a mental institution. So he goes to visit him and he's lost it. And then Ben leaves and Harry kills himself. And then Ben finds a collection of letters that Harry had and has decided to publish them as a book. So it's a book within a book that is also epistolary. And it's kind of one of my favorite things where it's fiction that reads like nonfiction, like he's describing the story to us because his brother, you get it, hopefully. But the story takes some wild turns that I couldn't have seen coming. It is mostly set on the mountain with our little crew of expeditionists, other scientists, some military people, and what they find on the mountain and the various weird things that are happening. You do find out, maybe not in the first prologue, but in the first chapter, you find out it's doing something with time. It is not specific at that point, but you know it's going to go down. Because in that first chapter, Harry meets someone who is behaving like Harry at the end of the book. So you know that that guy went up the mountain and whatever happened to him is going to happen to Harry and it's going to be bad. I truly loved all of the sci-fi parts of this. The time stuff is always going to be something that I love, and it explores it in a couple of unique ways and does a pretty good job of explaining some tough concepts. At least I thought so. Where this book suffers is in the writing. I think having this be epistolary doesn't serve it very well because you're never in the action, or if he's describing action, it feels sort of unnatural because, like, why would you be putting this in a letter to your niece? Because they're also all addressed to his niece, who we never actually meet. And the other issue with it is that it reads sort of dry because he's a scientist. Like, his voice is very good, but he is a dry person. And then when you start to get into like backstory stuff and him explaining it, it doesn't work well because a large portion of this book is talking about his backstory with his ex-wife and their adoptive son. It's a fine story, like the content of it is fine, but I hated reading it. Every time we had to go back to it, I was just so bored because he just never explains things the way that I want them explained, or it's not emotional enough, or they're just inserted at times that like I don't really care about. And there's a lot in this book that is like, I don't know why I'm reading about this until you get to the end. And when I mean the end, I mean like the very end. It is a slow build of a book because the beginning, like the very opening, is excellent and so intriguing, and then it gets kind of boring and slow, and then you just fall off a cliff at the end. Metaphorically, I don't believe anyone actually falls off of the mountain. But Ascension is such a good science fiction story. It's also a thing where you finish it and you have to read the beginning again. Both like because you can't stop thinking about it and because the beginning is the end of Harry's life. And so you sort of have to go back to it because all of these references in the first chapter, either they didn't make sense or they seemed innocuous. Now everything has meaning to it. And there's a lot of discussion about whether the things in Harry's story actually happened. It's my favorite kind of science fiction, and I'm devastated that I can't give it 5 stars because it is just such a slog to get there. So much of what the book is trying to say doesn't land properly, and I think a book should be good the whole way through it, not just in the last 20%. But don't kid me, that last 20% is incredible, and I will recommend this book and put it in my top sci-fi. I just think that all of the backstory stuff takes up so much and it's so unnecessary. And I think there could have been ways to retool this story to make it a 5-star thing, but it's just not quite there for me. And maybe if I do a reread, because it is, oh, it's just full of nuggets. Maybe I should put that on my want to reread. I don't have a list, but maybe I should start one. So in terms of recommending this to someone, I would say if you're intrigued by the concept and you read the prologue in the first chapter, and if you're still in it and in for a long ride, go for it, because the ending will bring you back to that place. But if you read those and aren't prepared for the slog that you're about to go, I shouldn't say a slog, it's a fairly short book. It's just explosions at the beginning and the end. But if you're in for a good sci-fi concept and a lot of science being explained at you and a weird time, then I say go for it. Hello, I am currently this far, less than halfway into Imogen, obviously, and I'm kind of obsessed with it. There's nothing like super special about this. It's just like very cute and very well written, and I'm having a lovely time. It's very palate cleanser-y. I think my description of this was wrong, barely wrong if you think about it. It's about this girl Imogen who, I shouldn't hold this up, this is nothing, although it's so pretty. It's about our main character Imogen, who is going to a prospective college for a weekend or something. I don't know if this is a real thing people do. They're like testing out colleges but also staying for a couple days, because one of her best friends is a year older and is already at the college, and so she's hanging out with her and all of her queer friends. And the friend Lily is pansexual, I think, but has never dated anybody, and so she, in an effort to be cool, told people that she and Imogen had dated, but Imogen is straight, so she's sort of having to like fake X. It's like fake dating, but not, in a very interesting way that I really like. And then one of the girls in the friend group Imogen is drawn to, and she can't quite figure out why. But the really interesting thing about this book is that Imogen is just like the world's greatest ally and is constantly worried about queer baiting. And I am really enjoying this on like a meta level too, because I know that Becky Albertalli was featured in some online discourse because she's the author of Simon versus the Homo Sapien Agenda as a straight girl, and she later came out and was basically like, you shouldn't have to come out in order to like prove your authenticity for something, which is just, it's all a very interesting take, and I love seeing that journey that she herself went on represented in this book. I'm sure it's not one-to-one, but it is bringing like a new aspect to me of someone who assumed that they were straight and found it later in life. Because that's Imogen's big thing too, was like everyone she knows knew when they were like 5, and she's never really felt that way despite being surrounded by queer people all the time. That's making it sound a lot heavier than it is. This is a very cute book, some very light bants in it. They do a cute little trivia night. They do like pranks on each other. It's just very cute, but I wanted to stop here because we've stopped the university portion at this point and I don't know where we're going. Imogen was only staying at the college for 3 nights and that's happened. So now she's back home and we're meeting her mom, because we didn't meet her mom at the beginning, and she lives on a farm with a goat. And so I'm very curious to see what the trajectory of this book is, especially because the cover, you're like, yeah, we're set at school, we're doing academia, got it. And now it's not that, and I'm really excited. It reads so fast, so I'm sure I'll get through this in no time. yeah, like huge sections of text messages. It's a great read. And despite being over 400 pages, it is flying by. So I'm gonna sit here and get back into this. All right, I finished Imogen, obviously, last night, and I'm obviously gonna give it 5 stars. I really loved this. I think that this is a really cool book, and I think that this is something that I'm happy to see published in YA in 2023. Yeah, after the last time I talked to you, this became much more explicitly about the discourse, which I think was good because I know, like, I am embroiled in a lot of online discourse, and I can imagine that teens are also, and that it's a lot and overwhelming and confusing, and I think that this did a good job of presenting how confusing it is while also not like picking sides with anything. It's really just about Imogen and her friends wanting the best for her, and it's a really lovely story. I also really love Becky Albertalli's writing. I think that she just has like a YA voice to her that I really love and reads perfect for the age range. Like it might feel a little bit young, but I think it's nice to have a last year of high school, first year of college story that still feels very youthful. Youthful, they're children, but like bright and hopeful and stuff, and not about the sadness of growing up. This just, even when it was slightly sad, it was still a heartwarming and uplifting story. Yeah, I'm just really impressed by this, and so I'm gonna go back and see what Becky Albertalli has and maybe dive into some of it. But yeah, I think that this was great, which leads us into Goodreads Choice Awards, because right now it's the last day that you can vote for, and so I'm gonna vote in all of the categories that I feel comfortable with. Naturally, there is discourse around the Goodreads Choice Awards, and so my general philosophy, because we all know it's garbage anyway, I will vote for something that I think is worthy of winning. I don't necessarily have to read everything, but this is in the YA fiction section, and I'm going to vote for it despite not having read anything else in the category, which I like obviously feel a little bit bad about. But I do think that this is something special, and I wouldn't be upset if this won. Another category I'm going to vote in is romance, and there's 2 that I'm waffling between: You Again by Kate Goldbeck, which I read and loved, and Happy Place by Emily Henry. I'm going to pick Happy Place because I think that it is a better book. I think that You Again is incredible, but Happy Place destroyed me. It like broke me and put me back together again, and I loved it a lot. Of course, I feel a little bit bad having Emily Henry potentially win again, but I think that she's just that good. Also, no Coho on the romance list, which is kind of wild. All right, and then fantasy, I read 2 and a DNF, but Tress and Amina were both incredible, 5 stars, definitely worthy of winning awards. But I think the edge goes to Amina here because it's just something so special. Tress knows what it is and commits to it and delivers perfectly, but Amina has some like twists and turns in it that you don't see coming, and I'm so excited for the second book to come out. All right, that's 3. The last one we're gonna vote in is sci-fi, and I think I'm gonna give it to Ascension. I think that it is a very good sci-fi book. I think that it explores the concept that it has for science fiction in a couple of different ways, and even if the book has some faults, the science fiction of it is great. So that's gonna be my vote, and we'll find out in 2 days whether those have made it to the second round. And I've only got a couple days in order to finish this up. I didn't realize it closes so fast. Everyone reading the top 10s, you're all crazy people, but good luck to you. So I think the only other thing that we're gonna make it through is Starter Village by John Scalzi. I checked this, and I think it's like 260 pages, which makes me very hopeful. So I'll get started on that, and then We'll see what made it to the next round too. All right, Goodreads Choice Award update time. It is honestly best case scenario for me. Everything that I voted for made it through except for Ascension, which was the sci-fi pick. So that feels good, especially because I'm reading Starter Villain right now, which is another sci-fi pick, and it's so good. I don't think I could have predicted that this book would be as good as it is. This is my first John Scalzi, and I know that he is very prolific in science fiction, but I figured he would be old. He's been around for a while. I figured he would sort of fall into more like high literary stuff. No, this book is so good. At the beginning of it, I was thinking like it's a humorous book, but it's not like trying to be. It's just like naturally funny. And then I got to talking dolphins. And now we are just sort of off the rails. So if humor in your science fiction bothers you, this might be a bit much, especially because the first thing the talking dolphins say is fuck nugget. It's a great time for me, but I really don't want to give too much away other than that there are talking dolphins. So how this book starts is our main character, Charlie. He is down on his luck. He was a journalist who got let go, and his father died, and his siblings hate him, and he's broke and stuff. And then his very rich uncle dies. It is slowly turning into him taking over his uncle's company and all of the things that they do. I'm about 30% into it right now, so I actually don't know everything, but I'm assuming that it's gonna get wild. And I'm loving it so much. I think the writing is so stellar, and there's cats in this. There is no cat in a suit as of yet. I wouldn't put it past him, but there is a strong cat presence in this book, which I am really enjoying, and it's just a lovely time. I'm flying through it. It's not that I'm already liking this more than Ascension. This is just such an easy thing to vote for. I am interested to see how science fiction-y it goes, because right now, other than talking dolphins, it's a pretty grounded story. It's reminding me a lot of Hench by Natalie Zena Walshcott. I guess that was science fiction too, but I hated that book. This is what I wanted from that book, and I'm having a great time. What else is in science fiction that I've read? Marriage Act by John Mars, good. Again, less science fiction-y. And then In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune, definitely science fiction-y. I gave it 2 stars. So right now, Starter Villain is the clear winner. Ascension is gone, which I do think is quite devastating, but I haven't read a lot of these titles. I think this is the last book that I'm going to have time for, so I'll finish it up, and then we'll wrap this thing up and do our final voting. We were cleaning out the linen closet the other day and found this, which I'd forgotten I had. It's my unicorn onesie, and it's luxurious, and I've been living in it the past couple days, and it's so much fun. This mane gets tangled all the time, but I love it. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for Starter Villain, which I'm so disappointed in. The last time I talked to you was really the high point of the whole book, and it super went downhill after that. It ended up being just like a lot of business speak. It was a lot of villains trying to convince other villains to do things, or scheming, but it's also the kind of scheming where you don't actually know anything. Like, people are telling you things, but they're obviously lying, and just, you can't trust anything, so you don't know anything. So I just felt kind of lost. And I'm also very disappointed because there were virtually no sci-fi elements to this. Really, the talking dolphins were the only thing, and that sort of didn't really go anywhere. It didn't evolve in any way. There was actually a quote in the book that I thought summed the whole thing up perfectly for me. "This place is too mundane for an organization that has genetically engineered dolphins and lasers that can shoot satellites out of the sky." Like, it should be so great, but it ends up just feeling really mundane. I did like it still. I think that the writing was really solid and it had great moments. It just didn't really come together for me. And I was trying to think, because this is a 250-page book, that like maybe this is something where the idea really only supported a 100-page book and he didn't have enough to expand it into like a 300 or 400 page, so it's just sort of sitting in this awkward middle ground. I think I'm gonna give it 3 stars because there were still some bright points in it. It's just a really disappointing read for me, and I think that means that I won't be voting in sci-fi, which is really upsetting. But let me tell you what I am voting for. Voting closes tomorrow, so this will be the end. Sci-fi, I'm gonna vote for nothing. For YA fiction, I am gonna vote for Imogen, obviously. And then for fantasy, I'm not gonna vote for anything that I read in this video, but I am still going to vote for The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi, which I cannot recommend highly enough. It's definitely going to make it into my top 10 of the year. I am glad that I'm able to vote for some things in this Goodreads Choice Awards, but this is definitely the least passionate that I've been about it in many years. But that's it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you're voting for in the Goodreads Choice Awards. If you've still got time, I don't know how quick I'm going to edit this video and get it up, but I'm excited to see who the winners are next week. All right, that's it for me. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you very soon in another video. Goodbye.